So I thought that in place of that, and this feels a little bit arrogant on my part, I thought we would do a little bit of meditation on what it means to be homeless. And not that I have ever had that experience. I have a great resource network. I don't know that I would end up that way. Sometimes it feels it, but it isn't. But I'd like you to bear with me and to go through a kind of guided meditation on what it might be like to be homeless. So I invite you into that space of soft eyes. You want to close them, comfortable body. Let's just take a few deep breaths together. Lots of reasons why people become homeless. We think sometimes that it's all about mental illness or alcohol, drugs, but that isn't the case. It can happen to anyone. I'd like you to imagine that you have become homeless. That you have no family or friends that can take you in. Because most of them are struggling too. They just don't have that space or time or inclination. What do? You find yourself no longer having an apartment or a couch to sleep on. Maybe you sleep in your car. But what if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? Where do you take a shower? Maybe you go to a shelter, but it's full. Maybe you do find a room, but it's so hard to sleep with all the snoring and people getting up to go to the bathroom. You get some food, but never when you want it, what you might even want or need. As you walk down the street with all the possessions that you own on your back, people don't look at you. No one says hi or have a nice day. They don't look you in the eye, they look at your feet. Maybe you try to find a bench to sit on outside Target or Walmart. Figure out what to do. Maybe hold up a sign. Maybe somebody can give you some money so you can get to that job. But the manager of the store comes out and threatens to call the police. You apply for jobs, but you don't have an address, and your phone's about to run out of power, or you can't pay the phone bill. So there's no way for them to reach you. If you're resourceful, you might go to the library. I mean, it's warm there. There are computers to use. But it's hard to find one you can get to. Or maybe when you get there, they ask you to leave when you fall asleep in a chair because it's warm and you haven't been able to sleep well. You've got a toothache, but what to do about it? Can't afford a dentist. You lost your eyeglasses ages ago, so you haven't been able to see anything, you just squint. You find some others that are homeless on a riverbank, and at least they understand what you're going through, though you're not sure if you trust them. You found some old blankets you can sleep under. People there share information about where to get food, but it's hard to get anywhere. Even consider stealing a bike just so you can get around and check on the jobs that you hope you'll get hired for. you're aware that there are good people trying to help, that some even maybe make it out, you begin to wonder, are you good enough to be one of them? If you're religious, you wonder, did God do this to me? What's wrong with me? Despair, hopelessness. They're like brothers and sisters that walk with you. And suddenly drugs and alcohol, which you can find at the camp, they don't look that bad. Something to escape. What would you do? What could you do if you were homeless? No one to take you in. Where would you go? How would you be? What might happen to your mind and your body? So I know that we're expecting then Kenneth Baptiste up here, and I understand he's running into some traffic from coming from LA. So we won't be able to, Kenneth is an activist who's been very involved in homelessness, and I know that he has an inspiring message for you, and hopefully he'll come here very, very soon. But let's go ahead and have Cynthia Sanchez from OCO is here, and she's happy to share her story with you as well.
I am here. I think that's achievement enough in and of itself, right? Thank you so much for having me. This is actually my first time here at your service, so I feel really blessed and really grateful. Homelessness is an issue that I work on a daily basis as a community organizer for OCO. We're a nonprofit organization that empowers people of faith to do something in their community that they're passionate about. And for me and for the faith leaders I work with, homelessness is certainly close to their heart. Some of us have never experienced homelessness, and we've always had the privilege of a home. Some of our leaders are very, very privileged. Others have been formerly homeless, as is the case of Mr. Tim Houchin, who couldn't be here today. And I think it's important to not so much know the experience of homelessness yourself, but to know why you would personally want to tackle something like this in your community. And it really begins with an internal search and with an understanding of what calls you to fight for housing, what calls you to fight for your brothers and sisters sleeping on the streets. For me, my mother and I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment with a single mom, and we couldn't afford the rent to our apartment, so 2 other families lived in our unit. There was one family in 1 bedroom, a second family in the 2nd bedroom, and my mother and I would sleep in the living room floor. This went on for years while she worked the night shift at a factory. And through all this time, I knew that the way that we would be able to fix this situation and to receive some relief was for me to have an education and to make enough money to buy a home one day. And so I put all my brains and heart into it, and eventually I was accepted into the University of California, Berkeley. I went there for 4 years, and I majored in English and minor in business, but the one thing I value the most about that education in my college years was actually an internship I received in the neighboring city of Oakland, right by Berkeley. In Oakland, there was a community organization that allowed me to sit with them and work with them. And this organization supported families that were being evicted, families that had paid their mortgage for years and years. And unfortunately, the housing crisis hit, and they couldn't pay their mortgage for a few months, and the banks were not giving them a second chance, so they were losing their homes. And to me, that was such a crazy thing, right? Like, I had imagined and dreamed about owning a home one day and feeling like that was the dream achieved, that would give my family the security and safety that we always wanted. And the truth was that I was meeting families on a daily basis that had a home, and they were very insecure about it. They couldn't afford to live there anymore. Families who had lived in the city of Oakland for years and years. And it was such a disheartening moment, but it was also a moment of such clarity in my life where I realized that whether you lived in an apartment that was in a very poor condition with roaches and sanitary issues, as you can imagine, or you lived in a house that you couldn't afford, you somehow experienced the pain and the difficulty of living in this economy that can't afford you a comfortable home unless you make a very high income. After graduating from Berkeley and completing my internship, I came back to Orange County and I began working for OCO as an organizer. And I learned about a third spectrum of the housing issue, and that is homelessness. I now work on addressing the most vulnerable community in that spectrum, people that have literally no roof over their head. As you may have heard, and recently in the news, folks are being evicted from the riverbed. People who have been pushed out of their cities due to anti-encampment ordinances that our city set to make it really difficult for them to sleep on the street. And so they're pushed out of their cities, and the only other place that they found refuge in is the riverbed, the county's flood channels. There is men and women there who face incredible difficulty on a daily basis, but to a small degree, they found a community that they feel relatively safe around, and now they're being evicted. In the face of all of this, we have a group that has been fighting to address this issue. Research shows us that our county that currently spends over $299 million each year to address homelessness would save money if we were to house them. We would save more than $45 million if we were to put each chronically homeless person in an apartment unit of their own. We have shared this kind of data and more with the supervisors on a regular basis. But that somehow is not enough to shift their understanding about how much it is needed that we address the issue of housing. And so if they're not listening to data and to studies backed by University of California, Irvine, and United Way, a very reputable organization that some of you might know of, if they're not listening to that data, if they're not listening to the data of policy analyst Eve Garrow of the ACLU, who will be speaking after the service around the issue of homelessness and some data around that, then what can we do? What is the power of people in the face of elected officials who refuse to listen to us, who refuse to acknowledge that not only the fiscally responsible way, but the morally correct way to do things is right in front of them, and they don't want to do it? And so I'm here today to both share this story and ask you to join us in some way, shape, or fashion. At some point today, we will be distributing a sheet of paper where you can write down your name, email, and an option of how you may want to get involved. Option A is just receiving some information about the state of homelessness in the county via email. Option B is being willing to be invited to some of the things that we're doing around organizing, whether that is getting together and going to a Board of Supervisors meeting and letting them know why it's important to end this, or whether it might be going to the riverbed and seeing what is going on there and how we can help. Option C is if you have the time and you feel like this is close to your personal calling, attending weekly meetings to plan this campaign, move it forward, and build relationships with some of the folks in the county that are trying to end homelessness. I know that I may be looking super naive up here, and when I say that, I think ending homelessness is possible, but I really do. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be up here. But I think that people of faith specifically have an incredible role to play in ending it. If our supervisors are not listening to numbers and figures, then they will surely listen to the moral calling that I think every human being has to address this issue. We have had faith leaders in the past go, and it is incredible to see how supervisors that are looking down and not really addressing the audience look up when they hear the moral argument about God calling us to live in a place where oppression and suffering are not a day-to-day experience for some people. And so I just want to leave you with this, thinking about what is your role as a faith leader in your community, as someone who has a prophetic voice to speak up on this issue. Whether homelessness is a huge issue in your neighborhood, in your community, or whether it's something that you know it's happening in your county, but you don't necessarily see it on a day-to-day basis. And so I'll leave you with this. It's a quote by Martin Luther King, who we know said this in the 60s, but unfortunately it's very applicable today. He says, "We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a money-oriented society." And I think that's the case with our county, right? Making a call to action to shift the paradigm to what is morally right and what we know in our hearts to be the right move for our county. So thank you so much for having me. Kenneth is here, Reverend, so that's awesome. And thank you for having me. Yeah.
First thing, giving honor to God, who blesses us all. Okay. I'm also with Cynthia. We are part of this coalition of housing is a human right. I also belong to another campaign, that's the Poor People's Campaign. And that's the one that Martin Luther King started back in his day. And also, I am the leader of the Orange County chapter of Represent.us, which is an anti-corruption political campaign. First thing I'm gonna start with is housing is a human right. We've been on boots on the ground in the riverbed. And when I say boots on the ground, our people are there every day. We have one lady, her name is Heidi Zimmerman. And Heidi lives in Huntington Beach, but she has made it a pledge and a passion to go ahead and make sure that these people are treated with dignity. But I mean, almost to the point where she is ready to go bankrupt. Passionate, tears, talking to the Board of Supervisors, talking to the Anaheim City Council. I feel proud to be part of the coalition that made a difference in the people in the riverbed. Because it was like we were sending a message, a moral message to the rest of the country that our new people that are discriminated against, which is called the classification of the poor, people who we have disabled veterans. I can go ahead and put a backpack on you and give you a rifle, go out and defend the right of everybody, but I can leave you in the riverbed. We have women out there. We have women from domestic violence that rather live on the riverbed than live in a home. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the horror that those women live with? Put themselves in a situation where they're in one world of being victimized, but they rather put themselves in a position of another world of a community that may victimize them, but they feel safer there. We're talking about our children. We're also talking about children, if we're going to go ahead and say it like it is. But those children out there, you'll never find them. Because they know the reality that if they're caught out there, that children's services will come and separate them from their family, their mother, their father, and they'd rather go through hard times being together and separated. Our Board of Supervisors had a plan, 10-year plan to end homelessness here in Orange County. They had saved $900 million to end in the 9th year. With this group that we are part of, which is part of the group that went ahead and did the civil rights lawsuit for these people who could not speak for themselves. They took some of the $700 million and put up the motel vouchers, busing, rest of the things to clean out the riverbed. But what they didn't tell you was is that they had already spent $200 million towards homelessness already. Now, I guarantee if I gave you $200 million to end homelessness in Orange County, it would not look the way it looks today. The point of it is, the last 2 weeks, we have went ahead and lived through some of the coldest days of the winter. Most of us have been in our homes. We can turn up the heater, we can get up underneath the cover, we can close and lock the doors, we can make sure our new insulated windows are keeping us warm and everything else. But if my fellow man is out there suffering, then in my heart, we all, as a religious moral compass, should be hurting. Because why? Who are these people? They are fathers, uncles, grandfathers, mothers, aunties, sisters, brothers, children. They are our people. This is America. We don't supposed to go ahead and divide a third class and start a third class country in America, not one of the richest, most powerful countries in the world. And plus, we're in Orange County. We have one of the 30th best economy in the world. You mean to tell me that speaking to you as a church, you're going to tell me that God did not give us enough to take care of all of our needs? if you believe in the Word of God, you know that He will take care of each one of our needs. But what it is that we are now at a point where it is the beat of humanity versus technology, the beat of technology. And we have to be the ones to be the morals, to stand up. Because if you are not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem. Amen? Amen. Because I went back to school to get my degree after 33 years, and I went into humanity and human services. We had to study the Holocaust, where everybody thinks it was just the Jews. Once you got to studying it, it was the elders, it was the handicapped. Then it was the mental. And then there was an old saying. Then they came for me. I should have spoke up when they came for the first ones. We are not that far away from being there. We're not. One hit upside the head, one bad fall. We could be in one of these situations. So my point of it is as a leader of the anti-corruption, which I think that God put that in my hands as a blessing and for a purpose. Because I consider myself having a priceless soul. It can't be bought. It can't be sold. It belongs to Jesus Christ and God. So when you have one of those kind of souls, the devil will try to do everything else to test you. We know he comes to seek and destroy. So we, as people who believe in God, should totally stand up, do something in some type of way. And our moral principle should be to try to bless somebody every day. And by us going ahead and doing that out there in that riverbed, it really makes us feel a whole lot better that we're doing this. And it makes you appreciate more for the blessings that God has given us. I guarantee you. And I'm going to close with this. For my next birthday, I'll be 64. So I'm a senior citizen. And being a senior citizen and fighting for people who can't fight for themselves or speak for themselves, it really gives you a very energetic charge. And we know that when we get to heaven, we all get hugs. But those of us who go ahead and fight for his cause, we get the special hugs. Thank you very much.
Saying that this is a moral issue. As Unitarian Universalists, we have 7 principles, right? Our 6th is our vision of the beloved community, to build a world where peace, liberty, and justice for all. For me, I'm what I call a 1st and 7th principle preacher, because I believe that's where our moral code is just grounded in, right? Our 1st principle says that we affirm and promote the inherent dignity and worth of all. Of all. It doesn't say those who have homes. It doesn't say those I have to like them all. It doesn't have to be just for people who aren't mentally ill or who are not addicts. It's for all. Dignity and worth for all. And our 7th principle says that we are all children of God. That's the Christian way of saying it. For Unitarian Universalists, we say we are interdependent, right? We are one. We are one together. This is a moral movement. It's a time for everyone to really realize what is going on. How are we treating them? Jesus would say, right, how you treat the least of these is how you treat me. We would say, how you treat them is how I am treated. I am one with people. We are Unitarian Universalists, and we work hard. I have seen every single person in this room practically doing something in this world right now, and I am so proud of you for that. About 3 years ago, this congregation decided it was going to tackle homelessness, and we've done some things here and there, definitely, and then, there was an election that happened that kind of threw people for a little bit of a kilter there. And all of it is good work, because some people are working upstream, right? Like from our Time for All Ages story. Some people are working upstream. They're working on making sure the right people get elected, right? So we can get the right policies in place. That we can do some cultural shifts in the way that people are seen, not just as baggage on the way to, I just don't want them around me, right? But that everyone has dignity and worth. And then there's people who are working downstream. People who are working to put together, hygiene kits, trying to feed the homeless, working in, food banks, all sorts of things. And there's everything in between, trying to find housing for people on a riverbank, trying not to get them evicted. All of that is there, and all of that is needed, and wherever you are called is where you are called to do whatever you can. And there's so many different ways to do it, from literally making phone calls from your home to, politicians, to showing up at the supervisors' meetings to say, excuse me, 900 million? Where's that going? Can you give me an accounting, please? Whatever it is that you feel called to, you are called. This afternoon we have a forum afterwards where Eve Garrow from the ACLU will be speaking, as well as Linda Lenkering, who is from our Anaheim church, and they've had incredible success up in Anaheim in battling homelessness, and it needs it down here also in central Orange County. So please come out for that. Please be a part of this, because only together are we going to build this new house where everyone is invited, is treated with dignity and worth. Please come out.
Please stand as you're comfortable, and we will build this house.